We're here with Paul Goldstein, former professional tennis player, a DC native. And Paul, first of all, thanks for being here, supporting the troops, and tell us a little bit about how you got involved with ThanksUSA.
Well, absolutely. So first of all, I am thrilled to be here. I've known Bob Oaken, the organizer of the event, for many years, 15 years.
Heck of a tennis player.
Heck of a tennis player, heck of a golfer, one of the best athletes you're ever going to come into contact with. Just think the story is absolutely wonderful. His daughter starting this charity 5-6 years ago. The goal. This is the third year of this particular event. The goal is to raise enough money to send to give out 500 scholarships to families of military, to 2- and 4-year sort of educational institutions. Some of the scholarship winners or recipients are here today. It is just a wonderful cause, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, great. Yeah, I believe they've raised about $6 million total and about 2,000 scholarships, something to that effect. So, have you played in these? Tell us a little about playing in these charity pro-ams, and what do you find the most sort of the most enjoyable about doing something like this?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, the fact that we're impacting lives in a very real and concrete way is the thing I feel best about. I stopped playing professionally on a different sort of track. I stopped playing professionally several years ago to stay involved in the tennis community. Is a wonderful thing for me. Get to see a lot of old faces and friends. And when I say old, it's just, I don't mean aged old, but folks I used to bum around with a lot more frequently than I'm able to do now. So it's a really small world, the tennis world. I love staying involved, and to come back and see familiar faces and friends is really special for me.
Well, great. Well, let's change gears slightly, because yesterday we had the French Open men's final, and it was an interesting match from my perspective. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it was. So, I thought Soderling was going to push it to 5 and ultimately go down to Rafa. But give me your thoughts on that match, because there's obviously on the internet a lot of chatter about it. So we want to get a professional's take.
Well, look, I liked Rafa going in. The guy maybe was a little bit banged up last year at the French, but it is just, I think, hands down the greatest clay court player perhaps of all time, with very due respect to Bjorn Borg, who has 6 French Open championships. Rafa has 5. Certainly wouldn't have bet against him to get his 6. I think the big difference between the match yesterday and the match a year ago was Soderling, as I understand it, was 0 for 8 in break point opportunities the first 2 sets of that match. He had the first couple of break opportunities early in the first set and didn't convert. Last year when Soderling beat Rafa, he was 5 of 6 on break point opportunities. So there, you just don't give Rafa the chance to keep himself in the match when you have a chance to, just get your nose out in front. If you don't get your nose out in front against Rafa, it's gonna be a long day, and I think it was. Great tournament though for Soderling to back up what he did last year at the French, to come back and make finals again, beating Roger in the quarters. Phenomenal effort. But look, what Rafa's doing on clay is just, those are silly statistics. Did he lose a set on clay all year? He didn't lose a match. He might have lost 1.
2. I think he lost 1 to Almagro at Madrid, and there was another
1 to Verdasco maybe, but loses 2 sets the whole clay court season. What he's doing is just absurd. He is changing the way the game is being played in terms of athleticism, in terms of physicality. I think the only question with Rafa is whether or not he stays healthy. That's it. If he's healthy, he just does things that no one else is capable of doing, and he's really hard to deal with, particularly on a clay court surface.
Now, did you ever, in your professional career, did you ever match up against him or practice against him?
No, I didn't. I was on tour when he was on tour, when he was coming up, and we on tour the same maybe 2 or 3 years, but I happened never to play him.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I stopped playing professionally in late 07, September 07.
So, well, give us a professional sense of the type of ball he hits, particularly on the forehand, because there's, famously Federer's one-handed backhand struggles with that. So talk a little bit about your perspective on the type of, heavy topspin.
Quite simply, it's the heaviest ball in the world. It has just more rotations per minute than any other ball there is. We talked about before, it's the most physical ball. He plays the game very laboriously. A lot of energy into the ball, and what you get out of that is a ball that just hits the ground and just takes off. The guy who's going to have a chance to beat him, particularly on a clay court surface with the ball is getting up, is a guy like Soderling or a Tomas Berdych, who's 6'5", a 2-hand backhand. When Rafa hits that topspin ball, it gets up on most guys, most normal guys. A guy like Soderling at 6'5", he can still strike it in the contact zone before it gets up, which is why I thought, he was able to win last year, which is why I think a guy like Berdych would also maybe be able to be competitive against a guy like Rafa. And the fact that Roger's just the best player of all time, he can be competitive, even though his record on clay is not good. But it's just, it just has more rotations per minute than any other ball you're going to find. It's just the heaviest, most physical ball you're going to find.
Well, let me quickly, before we get started, to everybody out on the internet, a bunch of rec players mostly, what's sort of your analysis of a rec player's game? What do you think somebody could really improve upon? Maybe just a quick piece of advice from a pro such as yourself.
Well, look, I think the game is played more athletically today than it ever has been in the past. So if I'm training, I'm not training to necessarily be a tennis player. I'm training to be an athlete, and I'm bringing be in shape, and I'm bringing that athleticism onto the tennis court with me. Number one. In terms of drills, it might sound silly, but it's a drill I did as a professional, taught to me by Jose Higueras, in my view, arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time. Works with a lot of Spanish players, worked with Michael Chang when he won the French, worked with Jim Courier when he was #1 in the world. He'll stand right next to me, same side of the court, take a ball and feed it with his hand. And you have better control with your hand standing right next to you than you do feeding anywhere else. To the player's standpoint, you have to generate all your own pace. It teaches you how to move your feet and get yourself in position for every ball, because I don't care what your strokes look like, you got to get in position. There's one thing that's consistent about the best players in the world. They put themselves in position to strike the ball the same way every time as much as possible. That is the most consistent thing about tennis players, whether it's rec level or the professional level at the elite level. So that's what I would work on. It's a great drill for footwork. I just have someone stand right next to you, just feed it like this, move you around a little bit. You can really control it. Dead ball drill. Yep. Okay. But on the same, the guy's feeding it on the same side of the court.
So he can place it precisely and force you to move, force you to generate racket speed. Okay. Well, great. Really appreciate it, Paul. Thanks.